There is a common assumption that only madmen are engaged in mixed martial arts, but this is, for the most part, not true. Most of the fighters are professional and respectful of their opponents, but the key word is most. In this video, we'll show you 5 of the craziest MMA fighters. In our 5th place, Lionheart, Nightmare, Dream, or just Diego Sanchez. He has been called the living embodiment of unreasonable aggression and wild action. Although everyone knows Diego as a fierce fighter, at the beginning of his career his style was radically different from the current one. He was very successful in wrestling, and all of his fights were rather dull. But even with this approach, he reached a title fight against BJ Penn, who in the end defeated Sanchez skillfully. It was this fight that became the turning point, when Diego radically changed and became a much more aggressive fighter. His behavior before each match consists of aggressive stare-downs, designed to put psychological pressure on his opponent. His opponents were always bewildered, because Diego's words and actions led others to believe he truly was unstable. Whether he does this on purpose, or whether it is the result of damage received during his career, it is difficult to say. And his exits with the sign of the cross and shouts of "yes" created an even stranger impression for the crowd. However, his change in style had a very good effect on his earnings. He began to receive much larger royalties, and even an increase in the number of his defeats did not raise the question of his departure, since when he wins or loses, the public is entertained. For a while, he mysteriously won fights that he obviously lost. It was almost ridiculous that if Sanchez's fights came to a decision, it seemed his opponents were ready to lose, even if they had won all the rounds. It became clear that Sanchez had to be knocked out, otherwise his opponent would not win. And so it happened. Diego began to lose by knockout in almost every fight. Diego now has a successor in the person of Mike Perry, whose style bears obvious similarity to Diego's. They even became friends recently, and Diego is a great example for Perry. But even despite all the ambiguity of his character, his personality is hard to miss. Therefore, he ranks the 5th place in our top 5. In our 4th place, a Russian fighter, Vyacheslav Datsyk, known to everyone for his inappropriate behavior that began in childhood, when he started showing aggression towards his peers and would fight with his classmates. Several times he was hospitalized with concussions as a child, which affected his psyche. In revenge, Datsyk sought out fights with high school students, sometimes violently biting them. Eventually, he decided to engage in martial arts. He started in his teens, and his technique was amazing. He could appear to be losing the fight in one moment, and then the next he would strike and knock out his opponent. Nevertheless, he was not considered the best fighter, and repeatedly lost fights. In the ring, he was distinguished by his eccentricity. This made it very difficult to fight because he easily lost his temper and could begin to behave inappropriately. Very often, Datsyk was warned due to unauthorized techniques or even disqualified. Due to his uncontrollable aggression, Datsyk often argued with the referee and attacked his rivals. There were several known cases where Vyacheslav assaulted the referee. This fighter's best weapon was his head, which he considered to be the strongest body part, allowing opponents to strike him there. His first professional fight was against Andrei Arlovsky, who lasted the entire fight, but accidentally missed a blow to the jaw and lost to Datsyk. Later on, his career was not that impressive. He lost almost every fight, and when he was losing, he would hit below the belt, break rules in every possible way to win, and as a result, he was often disqualified. Moving up to 3rd place. If our 5th place contender, Sanchez, was just a bit insane, then Jonathan Koppenhaver, better known as War Machine, is truly insane. From his difficult childhood with troubled parents who frequently fought, to tough surroundings on the street, he always loved to fight and made it a central part of his life. One of those responsible for his entrance into MMA was the legendary Ken Shamrock, who later said he was ashamed that he promoted his MMA career. Jonathan's fights were always entertaining, and he managed to gain some popularity with the fans. However, not satisfied with the financial returns he received, he switched to the porn industry, where he met his future girlfriend and also pornographic actress, Christy Mack. This was followed by a time in prison for assaulting guards at a nightclub. He also started an internet blog where he made videos from prison. In general, the fighter had many problems with the law due to his bad temper, feeling at home behind bars. When he was released, he returned to fighting. He had 4 matches and started his own clothing brand. However, this success was short-lived, as Jonathan did something that put an end not only to his career, but his life as a fighter. After breaking up with Christy Mack, he broke into her house and found her with another man, who he drove out. He then beat Christy for 2 hours, inflicting a large number of serious injuries. She later claimed that he wanted to kill her. For such behavior, Bellator immediately fired him, and Jonathan went on the run, which was short-lived before the authorities managed to catch up with him. Subsequently, he was sentenced to life in prison and will be eligible for parole in 71 years. In second place, we have Charles Bennett. Compared to many in this top 5, Charles is a rather harmless character, but that doesn't mean that he is not insane. Let's go back to the days when he was nicknamed Crazy Horse and fully lived up to this name. What else do you call a person who has no formal martial arts training, yet fought professionally in MMA in his second fight? But things could have turned out differently if Bennett had come from a normal family. His parents were on drugs and he was one of 11 children. Charles understood that he had to move and somehow earn money, so he decided to sell drugs, for which he regularly ended up in prison. In a nutshell, this is how you can describe Charles's entire career: drug dealing, prison, fighting, and so on in a circle. It was these elements that shaped his personality. In the ring, stare-downs from fighters who would normally frighten their opponents caused wild laughter from Charles, and before a fight started, he would jump onto the cage or ropes. But the manifestations of his crazy persona do not end there. Although considered a lightweight, he got into a scuffle with the light heavyweight fighter Wanderlei Silva and his bodyguards. Bennett, to this day, claims that he managed to knock out Wanderlei behind the scenes. Such stories as this constantly surround him. Although Charles has not won a single title, he has managed to fight with many eminent fighters and champions. A fight with him is far from a walk in the park. A striking example is his fight with the powerful KJ Noons, who said he could easily knock Charles out of the way, and many expected just such an outcome. After all, KJ possessed good boxing skills and strength, having managed to defeat Nick Diaz during his prime. As an underdog, Charles went into the fight and knocked Noons out. And that's the whole point of Charles Bennett. He is contradictory, unstable, and this is what draws the interest of the public, and for which he gets second place in our top 5. Moving on to first place. In this top 5, we saw both crazy fighters and evil characters. But Jason Mayhem Miller encompasses all aspects of the previous fighters and added in his own character. Unlike the other fighters in our top 5, Jason was never really considered a tough fighter. On the contrary, all of his crazy antics remained outside of the octagon. He was, however, considered one of the most skillful grapplers of his time. He has victories over such eminent fighters such as Robbie Lawler, Kazushi Sakuraba, and Tim Kennedy. But in order to start a professional fight, you still need to reach the cage. And in this, Miller has no equal. His creative antics were remembered by many, especially his dance with Japanese schoolgirls. At one point, Miller was so popular that the MTV channel created a special bully beatdown program just for him, where Mayhem was the host. The essence of the show was that Jason was looking for various hooligans or even outright rednecks and bet them if they could beat him according to MMA rules, he would give them $10,000. But while Jason moved up the career ladder and shone in various popular programs, his personality did not change for the better. His first controversial antic was in the 2010 Strikeforce tournament in Nashville, when he interrupted Jake Shields during an interview after his successful title defense. Miller, without approval, jumped into the octagon from nowhere and started shouting, "Where is my rematch?" He thought it was funny, but Jake and his team didn't think so. The Diaz brothers, Gilbert Melendez and Cesar Gracie, rushed Miller and beat him. Soon after this beating, Miller's interviews got even weirder each time. In one instance, in the middle of an interview, he took off his pants and rushed the journalist. Despite all these antics, he was signed to the UFC. In his first fight, he was beaten by Michael Bisping, and the next fight he lost by decision to CB Dalloway. The 2 defeats in a row, combined with his inappropriate behavior, became the reasons for his dismissal. After that, Jason fully lived up to his nickname. Scandal after scandal, addictions to various drugs, and obvious mental disorders led to repeated arrests, each one more scandalous. At first, it was just public fights and drunk driving. Then, over time, turned into beating women and urinating on them. But the ultimate climax of Jason's madness was an inappropriate act in a church. Drunk and almost naked, he ran into the church, beat the priest, urinated on him, and then fell asleep. Jason was slated for a middleweight comeback in 2016, but his demeanor hasn't changed over the years. On weigh-in, instead of the required 185 pounds, he weighed in at 207 pounds. Additionally, he lost the fight because he was not in proper physical shape. Today, Jason is relatively calm, but years of drug use not only killed his voice and psyche, but also his body. What fighters do you think are the craziest ones? Let us know in the comments. If you like the video, press the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell. Until next time.